Hi, welcome to a very impromptu hangout with Justicar,
Yo,
Cora,
bitches.
Cora of Men's Rights Quincy,
Say hello, Cora, and somebody
Uh,
turn your radio off if you can.
Hello.
and of course the fat bearded neckbeard. Yeah, my tongue's tied. I'm having
I'm
too much fun already.
the basement dwelling neckbeard Dean Esme. Hello,
Yes,
everybody.
and am the host Jim Kilvarn. So we're going to have a lot of fun tearing apart some very interesting topics. Let's start off with
I'm here.
Time.com. You're here? Are you sure?
Yes, go ahead.
We're going to start off with Time.com. Just because something is free speech doesn't mean it's okay. Dean, would you read the article for everybody?
Well, Aliyah Salam, or Salem, either one, is the executive director of the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations. And here we have a quote from it saying, "I question the purpose of free speech when it's hate speech and when it's meant to incite violence." Now, actually, I think this gentleman is asking a fair question, in my opinion, because it's a whole thing. He says, "I agree that free speech is an important freedom, but after waking up every day to put on my headscarf and walk out the door, brace for the stares, the fingers, the slurs, and the death threats, the lens through which I view the world has changed." He's talking about how, maybe it's a woman, I don't know. I can't tell the sex of this person.
It's hard to see
Anyone
under
who's,
the burqa, isn't it?
yeah, I guess so. I guess she wears a burqa. Anyone who's ever scrolled through the comment feed of a story online that has anything to do with Islam and Muslims knows that by doing so, you will either lose faith in humanity or learn offensive insults that combine the words pig, dog, raghead, expletive of choice, and some version of "get out of my country."
The thing I'm most interested in so far is what would a non-offensive insult be?
Is there such a thing as a non-offensive insult?
Your shoes untied.
Now, this is kind of hard for me. I'll just say, and then I'll let anybody else say what they want. You're right that I don't agree that going around calling people offensive names just because of whatever is not a good thing. And in fact, I have torn apart some of what I would call genuine Islamophobes in the past, just because I have Muslim friends and they don't need that shit. So offhand, I don't see. I'm thinking Aaliyah here is a woman. I don't see her asking for anything except that we say it's wrong to treat people like that. That's what I'm seeing here, which I can't entirely disagree with. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm totally opposed to saying rude things to people.
All right, listen. You make funny videos, and you like to be snarky, and you're really good at it. But I mean, in real life, I don't think you just treat people you don't know that way. Maybe you do. I don't know. Tell me.
No, I actually don't walk up to random people and just call them names. I was raised right. When you have something rude to say about someone, you say it behind their back. It's called manners.
Oh, okay. What do you think, Jim? What prompted you to be interested in this? I mean, to be honest, I don't think she's saying anything I would disagree with here. It's not okay. Just because something's free speech doesn't mean it's okay to be a jerk. Is that an invalid point?
Well, it's not, in my opinion, an invalid point. There's nothing wrong with, generally being a decent human being to other people. But at the same time, I do want to point out, you look at what's going on with radical Islam, and a lot of the moderate Islams just sit there and do the whole, we're not like that, don't group them in with us. And you know what? I understand that there is a point to that, and to an extent I can even agree with don't group the moderates who are decent in with the radicals, but come on, what are these moderates doing to tell the radicals to stop?
Oh, well, I have a simple test for not grouping people in. Like, take the Westboro Baptist Church. I don't know any Christian who's afraid to say that those people are fucking nut jobs and they are a disgrace. I mean, they've been kicked out of all the Baptist conventions and everything. They're disinvited. look, your interpretation of this is false. That's not what the Bible says. Let moderates stand up and tell the so-called radicals that no, you've got it wrong. That's not really what Allah said. They won't do it, or rarely will they do it, I should say. And by the way, one other point: there's a distinction between saying one of the sources of tension arises from someone saying something like, "You shouldn't do this," and then saying instead of just saying you shouldn't do this, like you shouldn't just be a dick for no reason, then saying something additional, which is you may not say those things. And that's where I'm like, no, I'm not with you there. I'm with you with people should try to be somewhat civil, but the distinction is when you tell them they're prohibited from saying rude things. That's where I get interested.
Yeah, and I have to admit that your answer is, I mean, here we go. I always wind up talking about feminism, but I'd say that your answer is the same reason I give to feminists who come to me, and I've hurt their feelings because I say that feminism is an irrational religion and a hate movement. They say, don't let me in with them. And my usual answer is, what are you doing about them? Oh, nothing? Okay, fine. Shut up then, because I'm not shutting up until you do something about it. So I can see that point of view, too.
Oh, certainly. It's very difficult to get a feminist to say that there is such a thing as the wrong notion of feminism. But you don't get that. You get people like Jermaine Greer who will say, feminism, both feminism and its goals should remain undefined. I'm like, well, of course they should, because then it is about just perpetuating the struggle. It's Orwellian. It's not about having a goal and meeting it. It's about we just get to change the rules and restate things as we go along because nothing's defined. And the problem with not having things defined is you never ever know when it is you've gotten to where it is you want to be. Now I'll shut up so other people can talk. Well, that was useful.
What?
That I shut up so other people could talk and then no one talks.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you also have to, take into consideration all the media that's, pretty much focusing on just the bad part of Islam too. I mean, how big is the population of Islam followers in America? I mean, do they really have a large, voice here?
I think they're smaller than the Jewish population, and atheists. If I may be wrong on that, but I think that's true.
But I mean, if their voice is so small, how can they actually, stand up against such large, media distorting what they believe in to begin with?
Well, part of that is the victim complex because someone's attacking them.
Just so you know, Muslims, I'm looking it up, and if we agree with iDigital Times, Muslims are just a hair under 0.8. So call it 1% and call it even, 1% of the population. So that's small, and it's probably growing. And yes, there are lunatic Muslims, but are they really that much of a threat to the U.S. that people need to say Muslim? Ooh, what do we do about them? I don't know. All I can say is I have Muslim friends and I don't enjoy picking on them. I can tell them when I think they're wrong, but I consider that a conversation they have to invite me to. I'm not there to tell them not to be Muslim. So.
Oh, I would certainly never tell someone not to be of a particular religion. I think it's unwise to be a member of a religion. I mean, I'm one of those annoying atheists, but I certainly don't go around giving people advice on what they should and shouldn't believe in. I just try to state what I think is true and my reasons for it, and then let them make their decisions.
You know what? I'm going to pounce on that, and it's going to be a change of subject, but I'm going to ask you something straight up. Would you think, Justicar, that I watched the online atheist movement for a while, and I watched the tragedy that was of Rebecca Watson. Tragedy may be granting too much gravitas to elevator gate.
Rebecca Watson is like the slowest train wreck I've ever seen.
And she's tied to a much older and more embarrassing train wreck named P.Z. Myers. But like has, first we had the craziness over Elevator Gate and a supposedly skeptical community that just shit all over itself on the thought that somebody might ask a woman to prove something. And then we have the social justice warriors who George R. Martin, I recently read, says there's no such thing. Okay, thank you, George.
Oh, well, that's settled. Let's pack up and go home.
George Martin of Game of Thrones says there's no such thing.
We're done. Pack it up, folks.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think Gamergate is finished.
Because we didn't know there's no SJWs out there. But
well,
you know what? Most or all of them are atheists, too.
Let me just go ahead and get the whole Gamergate cleared up. There's no such thing as a problem with ethics in journalism. Let's go home, folks.
Yep, we need to. There was no ethics thing there. But actually, just to throw it out for thought, what you're seeing are explicitly atheist ideologies coming out there and just brutalizing people. Did you ever think, as an atheist, that the world will just be a better place if we were all atheists? Because when I look at certain activities these days, I'm like, no, you're just as much assholes as any religious fruitcake. But tell me what you think.
Yeah, I've put some thought into it, and there was something going around on the so-called atheist community on YouTube a couple of years ago about whether or not, if you could, you would get rid of religions, and I wouldn't do it because I don't think if you had a magic wand and you got rid of all religions tomorrow, which would be a contradiction, I understand, but just go with me, that things would improve. People will always find reasons to quibble. People will always find things to believe in that are false. People will always find nonsense. People will always find reasons to fight. But what I do think is that whatever the reasons are, whenever you have something like a religion, it makes it very much easier to get those things going on. Now, of course, politics can work just as well as religion, and people are going. So no, I don't think that if you went to the Middle East and the Jews stopped being Jewish religiously, not racially, and the Muslims stopped being Muslims, that they would all just hug it out. I don't think that's what would happen.
Yeah, I think I rather suspect you're right. I still occasionally will run into an atheist who's trying to tell me that really religion is the source of most irrationality in the world. I'm like, quantify that for me, because I see a lot of stupid completely outside of any religious context.
Yeah, I got to this one. If I may, Justicar.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
We don't want this to be the Justicar show today.
Well, speak for yourself.
Maybe tomorrow. Okay, but if you look at human beings, I think it's actually more of a human being thing, the irrationality and trying to quantify something in the way we want to believe it.
Jim, you're breaking up.
Yeah. Okay, that might be my internet connection. That might be my my microphone. But my dad has a saying that the human being is nothing more than the galactic cockroach, and we were kicked off the spaceship.
Human beings are galactic cockroaches kicked off the spaceship?
Yeah.
Well, that's a very cynical look at the human race.
Yeah.
There are times I feel it, I confess, because, oh my God, I look at people and it's like, holy shit, how do you actually walk around with that in your head? Whatever weird shit's in their head, but they do, right?
But that's the thing, is if you just observe human beings and how they interact, not only with each other but with the world, you sit there and you look at it, and if you're even a semi-rational person, I would be surprised if you're not saying, how are you even out and about? How do you tie your shoes in the morning?
I often wonder about a lot of people and how they manage to cross the street without being killed.
I wonder how they managed to cross the street without me killing them. No, I'm sorry.
I thought we got off to Muslim conversation. I'm kidding. Cora wanted to say something.
Well, I just feel that if humans have that good side of the spectrum, there will always be a negative side too. As long as people can get hurt, there will always be bad things. Whether you're atheist, it doesn't really matter what your religion is.
Well, that makes a good deal of sense to me.
Kind of yin and yang.
Laura? Yeah,
Yes.
I also sort of unpopular with some some atheists, simply because I maintain that once you see a certain behavior universally in pretty much all societies and all cultures, you have to think that there's a very good chance that this behavior is innate to human nature, that it has a biological tie, and I have long asserted that that is exactly what religion is, and you can't take it away from people or you'll fuck them up, and they'll make a religion anyway. So what is the point of fighting it? It's like fighting masturbation. They're going to do it.
Oh, we can. Oh, no, on that one, sir, we can beat it.
Okay. Okay, how? Just by educating people?
Yes, if we educate people about masturbation enough, I'm pretty sure we can beat it.
Okay, you were kidding. All right. You're right. We could fix masturbation in our lifetimes. So that's.
In fact, I'm going to put the Catholic priests in charge of that.
It worked so well for them, right? I mean, we had generations of young men just never masturbated thanks to.
Oh no, I was going to say, teaching the kids how to beat it.
Oh, shut up! God, okay, Jim, why did you invite him? Ah, you're awful, awful.
Have you ever been to t-shirthell.com?
No.
They have a shirt up there and it reads, Michael Jackson didn't molest those kids. He made love to them.
Oh,
Oh, Jesus.
Child rape jokes. Excellent!
Yeah.
Well, speaking of rape jokes, I've got to do this one. Let's see, where is it?
If I say no, will it matter?
No. Shit. Okay, yes. Will new focus on rape kit testing across U.S. put thousands of sexual predators behind bars?
Oh, God. Rape kits. Okay, Justicar, as a former police officer, I believe, may tell us something about rape kits. But am I the only one who's of the opinion that they are probably on a hunt for rapists, whether there are any rapists or not?
I will bet folding money that you're right. Now, let me go into this article. I will read this one out. By the way, Justicar, you get the next one.
Okay. I get the next rape?
Yes, you get the next rape.
Sweet. I haven't been laid all week.
Okay, the evidence piled up for years abandoned in police property rooms, warehouses, and crime labs. Now, tens of thousands of sexual assault kits are giving up their secrets, and rapists who've long remained free may finally face justice. A dramatic shift is taking hold across the country as police and prosecutors scramble to process these kits and use DNA matches to track down sexual predators, many of whom attacked more women while evidence of the crimes languished in storage. Well, at least they finally got that right. Lawmakers, meanwhile, are proposing reforms to ensure this doesn't happen again. There's definitely momentum, says Sarah Hackbird, managing director of the Joyful Heart Foundation, an advocacy group working on the issue. In the last year, we really are seeing the tide turn where federal and state governments are offering critically needed leadership and critically needed resources to fix the problem. In Cleveland, the county prosecutor's office has indicted more than 300 rape suspects since 2013 based on newly tested DNA evidence from old kits. Authorities expect to eventually charge 1,000.
I'm just wondering why these kits have sat. I mean, they've collected evidence and no one's bothered to look at it for 30 years. What the fuck is that?
Yeah, I've got a few other things.
Wait. They're being stupid, so let's be clear on what they're actually saying. You have police departments with unused, unopened, undone anything with, sitting unused rape kits. I've seen rape kits. I'm sure you have, Justicar. I don't know. I've seen them. They're in the box. They haven't been opened. And feminists have made a big deal of the fact that obviously, therefore, the cops aren't looking for the rapists instead of considering the possibility that they're not called on to use them as often as feminists would like.
Well, one of the I've done videos where I've mentioned this. I don't know if I've done a video specifically talking about just this. Actually, I did. I did it to Miriam Namatz, I think. Anyway, one of the difficulties in dealing with people who come in to file a rape complaint is that they frequently will show up 3 months later, 6 weeks later, a month later, something like that, and it's like, I'm sorry. It's really difficult to look at a person who you believe to have been raped, like the person comes in and they talk to you and you think there's something there, and then to tell them, I'm sorry, but you have decided from the decisions that you've made to destroy all of the evidence, all of it. And this is one of the consequences of feminists telling people that going to get the rape kit done is like being raped again. Oh, really? So that's an incentive to go get the evidence collected. Telling them, worry about your feelings and you first. No, worry about getting the evidence collected first.
Well, even if they did have, something that's considered evidence, it doesn't mean they were raped. It just means they had sex within the past, 24 hours.
Yeah, a semen sample only implies that sex occurred. And then you have to do other things to show rape.
That's right, and I don't want to go too men's rightsy on anybody, but a male who has been, in one way or another, forced into a sexual encounter with a female is probably not going to have any evidence left behind.
Oh, no, that's not true. The secretions work both ways.
Oh, do they? Can you pull them off of like vaginal fluids or whatever?
Yeah, you can pull. It was actually one of the problems back when they used to just use blood type ABO typing. You would take a sample from a woman's vagina, for example, and you would test it, and then it would be like, oh, this is O blood, and then it was like, well, the victim has O blood, so is this O type her? Is this her sample that was tested, or was it a secretion from the man? And then as tests became more sophisticated, you distinguish between male and female effluvia.
Oh, I see. Well, that does interest me. I mean, I know the cops are probably culturally unlikely to, oh, you're an 18-year-old man and you say this 20-year-old woman forced herself on you. But yeah, that's still, at least evidence can be collected.
I fully support, to go back to the topic of the article, I fully support their testing all of the rape kits that they do have. And when they talk about the number of rapists that they may catch from this, which is all fine and well, I'm fine with actual rapists being caught. But there's another side of that. How many people who are currently in prison for rapes they didn't commit might be exonerated from it? And I will remind you that once these people are convicted and they wind up in jail, it is hell for them to get new DNA tested in many places.
No, you're right. In fact, the system really doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, here's something.
Once you're convicted, once you got a conviction, new evidence, the system doesn't like new evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons is that one of the concerns of justice that the courts look at is the notion of finality. I'm all for finality too. However, a case is not finalized by imprisoning the person who didn't do the crime.
Well, there's actually a couple of things I want to point out that are in the article. Something I've been saying about this for years. When it costs about $900 to $1,000 per rape kit, most law enforcement agencies are going to go and pay salaries before they do rape kits that may or may not do anything for them. Then there's also the fact that, let's see.
That fact is a consequence of incompetence in law enforcement. And I've talked about this quite a lot. You will constantly be told that XYZ kind of thing isn't being handled. So what we need is more ABC, whatever it is, to deal with all these problems. I'm like, no, we don't need more. You don't need more cops on the street. You don't need more funds to pay for new equipment for cops in a lot of places. In some places, they really do just need new equipment. What you need to do is have something called a list of priorities. But it doesn't take a mathematical whiz to look around and notice what generates the majority of cases. It's not the important crimes that everyone cares about. Murder, rape, burglary. It's you look at the $6 or $7 billion a year industry that is just speeding tickets or traffic tickets. That takes a lot of law enforcement resources to deal with. Take all the traffic cops, train them as homicide and sex crime detectives, and you have a problem solved right there. And you can actually get away with quite a number fewer than what you have now. It's just a matter of having priorities.
I have to pick back something I just said. I'm sorry, it's important. I know you got to say something, but I said something that was dead wrong, and so I need to back up. And I went back and I reread this story. No, they are actually talking about kids that have been sitting in back rooms that
That's
were
what confused me.
That's my fault. That's totally my fault. I apologize. They are there. Now, I would have to venture a guess, though, that a reason some of them are sitting there is because the victim in question just said, you know what, fuck it. Don't go anywhere with this. Maybe not. I don't know. Now I don't know what's going on, so I was dumb.
Yeah, that's why I said at the top of the article, I don't understand why that these have not been tested for several reasons. One of which is to catch actual rapists, to find out if you have serial rapists or whatever. And the other point was just how many innocent people in jail will be exonerated thereby. Which is really, that's an important subject to me.
Yeah, that is an important subject. And there's, what's it called? The Innocence Project.
Yeah.
Has been working on that for years.
Well, that's the interesting thing about the Innocence Project is the Innocence Project is almost winding down from what I can see. I'm a huge fan of what they do, but the number of guys who can get out, like the argument of the system from what I've seen is that, well, we didn't have genetic testing in the 80s or it wasn't available everywhere, and so, okay, we'll go ahead and allow this for old cases, but they seem not to want, it's pretty much like what Jessica was just saying. There's no, if they were already convicted with a kit, we don't need to look at new evidence. That kind of attitude is there. I've seen.
There is a problem with that attitude because if new evidence comes about and it proves the innocence of somebody, our country is founded on.
Oh no! You can always go back in if you can prevent. Well, you can almost always go back in. I think if you can prove innocence. But one of the problems that you run into is people will come up with new evidence which would cast a reasonable doubt in a juror's mind. But once they're convicted, reasonable doubt no longer matters. They've been convicted. All that has been arbitrated. So you get this new evidence, and what the state is going to argue in most of these cases is, even accepting this new evidence is true, it doesn't prove innocence. It's perfectly compatible for this to be true and for the person to be guilty. And in a lot of cases, the evidence really is just of that type.
There's also a neat thing here in Michigan, which I like to throw out to people just as somebody doing meat work, is Michigan Innocence Clinic. Now they're out of the University of Michigan. They were founded by a woman who's now a Michigan Supreme Court Justice, and they specialize in non-DNA exonerations, going to people in prison and getting them out without DNA evidence, which is a significantly bigger challenge, I imagine. But they've had quite a success record of it. So, Justicar, if nothing else, you may want to look at that Michigan Innocence Clinic. They're doing neat stuff.
There are a lot of people, a lot of organizations out there that do neat things. There's one organization, the name of which escapes me at the moment. But what they do is they go out and find missing dead bodies.
Ooh.
Murder case. It really complicates stuff. They have geophysicists who work on. I mean, it's a top-notch organization, but it's extremely expensive to run.
I imagine, having worked on legal cases where we're pretty sure somebody's civil rights have been violated, or they're just flat out innocent, or even if they're not innocent, it's really clear that there's a problem with the system and how they got convicted, and even one of those cases can suck a whole year out of you without even.
Yeah, let me go back to what I was saying earlier about the. Okay, suppose that wait. Okay, so suppose that a person has been convicted of a rape, and a rape kit, evidence was taken and collected, and now it's been tested after the person's been convicted. And the kit comes back and it says the DNA from the semen contribution does not match the person in prison. Even there, the prosecutor can argue, all that proves is that when he raped her, he wore a condom. All that proves is that she had sex with someone else who wasn't this person. That doesn't say for a moment that he didn't rape her. And that's true. A semen, at most, all it says is that people had sex. The absence of semen doesn't prove you didn't rape someone because of condoms.
It's really been fascinating to me. I first got interested in this issue, and yeah, we're talking about the legalities of rape, but I lived in Illinois for decades, and there was a famous story when I was younger that made national news. You can look it up. The case is in, let's see, you'll find it in Wikipedia. You Google the name Gary Dotson, spelled just like the old Datsun car, and Kathleen Crowell Webb. Gary Dotson in the 80s was convicted of raping a girl and was in prison doing hard time when she recanted and made national news saying, I completely made the entire thing up. You need to let this man go. I owe him everything. I've destroyed his life, and he didn't do anything wrong. And they wouldn't let him out. They wouldn't even grant him an appeal. He finally got the governor of the state. I remember the governor of the state personally, like, coming in and having a televised sort of hearing where he listened to Gary Dotson and Kathleen Crowell-Webb, and he basically apologized to all present and commuted the guy's sentence and walked away and never said another word. The system didn't want to let him go at all. It does make me wonder how many Gary Dodsons are out there. Because till she died, and she's dead now, she died of like breast cancer or something a few years ago, but for decades she maintained she had wronged Gary Dotson. She even wrote a book about how she wronged him and gave him all the royalties. And yet, you don't hear her anymore. You don't hear these. I mean, it's like feminists want to get mad if we even talk about false convictions. And I don't know where I came with that story, but it did fascinate me that the governor of the state had to go around the system to let the guy out because the system didn't want to let go of him.
What I like is when feminists talk about bringing up issues of false allegations and false convictions detracts from real rape victims. Well, there's another side to that argument. All you have to say is bringing up real rape detracts from the problem of false rape accusations. I mean, it's just not an argument. I don't see why both problems can't be addressed, quite frankly.
Well, can I say something?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
When I was going through my state, Illinois, I looked on Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault, ICASA. I noticed a statistic. It said 50% of acquaintance rapes involve alcohol consumption by the offender, victim, or both. And I wanted to know they categorize, this, and if the supposed offender has drinking alcohol, shouldn't he be the victim?
Oh no. Obviously, if two people are equivalently drunk and they're a man and a woman, the man is the rapist. I think the way it should work is whoever's on top is the rapist.
Well, considering I tend to like the girl on top because I can play with her boobs, or if she's facing away, slap her ass. Does that mean I'm always getting raped?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, by feminist definitions of rape, I've been raped thousands of times, and that's just by myself.
Well, you didn't get verbal consent, did you?
It was not enthusiastic. It was very begrudging. I was in a hangout a week or two ago, and I mentioned that I calculated precisely when it was I was born, and then I said what happened was I came out, my hands came out slightly before my lower half, so right at the correct moment I statutorily raped myself.
Well, I'm just trying to say this: the statistic doesn't make any sense if you're categorizing, the offender as being drunk as not the victim. And then both. I mean, how do you choose?
I've seen that. I've seen other police statistics that are weird like that. Like one of my favorites has always been there's some police statistic that zings around or used to that something like 30%. I'll make the number up, right? But it's a large percentage, like 30% of all motor vehicle accidents, alcohol was involved. That's like a non-statement. That doesn't mean that what you're saying is that if I had half a beer and walked out of the bar and got into an accident. I mean, I don't drink at all, right? But I'm just saying that's a non-statistic. That's a
that is
a factual correct number that means nothing.
They actually use that. They're talking about accidents, pulling people over, and figuring out they've had one or more. Yes, they do that. I'm not saying whether it's correct or not, but yes.
No, what Dean's pointing out, and I'll explain it a little bit. When you're an investigator and you get to a collision, your job is not done by determining that one of the drivers was drunk. A person can be drunk and completely not responsible for a collision.
Right.
Yeah, well, the problem is in the statistics, there's a box that's marked. There's a box on there, was alcohol involved? Yes, and then you fill in like driver A blew a whatever it was that he blew. Or
right, and frequently you might measure nothing, the equivalent of one beer, or you might measure 20, and you're like, holy fuck, we got to get him off the road. The point is, the statistic in isolation has no meaning. It has
Yeah,
no.
and also you might just be reporting data that's not even relevant. I mean, for example, suppose that you're driving drunk. I don't know, you're like a .2 or something really really obscene, and you're
Right.
at a stoplight. Your light is red. You're in your lane of traffic where you're supposed to be, and you're at a dead stop, and someone else just plows into you. Well, that's an alcohol-related collision because one of the drivers was drunk, but alcohol played no part in that.
Right. Right.
Another way to talk about drunk driving statistics is when someone says, X% of when people hear that 30% or whatever it is, they'll say that translates into the mind as being 30% are caused by drunk drivers, which isn't the same as saying that 30% of them involve alcohol. But another way to say the exact same thing is just to state the complement. 60% of these collisions are caused by perfectly sober people.
There you go. We got to do something to get the sober people off the fucking roads.
Well, sober drivers, man, look at all the mayhem they're causing.
Well, yeah, but
in fact, maybe they're too uptight and they need to calm down with a few belts. Then they'll be safer. I think that's what we're saying here.
Okay, but what I've seen from the psychological perspective is you use these statistics, and you find this with feminism and their 1 in 5 rape statistic and everything else. They use this to create fear and to get people to emotionally react and jump in and try and do something. It is a controlling tactic.
Oh, well, once you say that X% of something has relation to some particular thing, well, then now you have identified a problem that needs money to be addressed.
Yes.
It would be the same thing as saying that X percentage of violent crimes involve a firearm. Well, okay, if I take out a firearm and beat you with it, that has involved a firearm, but it doesn't say anything.
Hell, I might have just had an unregistered weapon on my person that I never took out, and you could put me in your statistics as firearm related, because one was present, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a firearm related jaywalking.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is they're utilizing it in a way to create fear and get more money for something that may not really be all that.
This is a pattern
what's the word I'm looking for?
Well,
the problem's not as severe as it's made out to be, even though it still is a problem. I mean, rape is a problem, even if it's not that. Something doesn't have to be a huge problem to be a problem that requires attention.
Right.
Right, but I think Justicar has it correct. Invariably, when you see some really bad, like irresponsible use of statistics, stats that any mathematician could look at and in 3 seconds say, I know what's wrong with that stat, but the average person just doesn't see it. Usually, you may have these hysterics out there bleeding it because they're true believer syndrome, but there's somebody almost invariably, I don't like conspiracy theories, but there's almost invariably somebody making money off the lie, and that has a vested interest in keeping the lie going. And that doesn't even have to be conscious on the part of the people necessarily, right? But you tell an understrapped police department, I've had friends who are cops, okay, and I
not me.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. But I mean, yeah, an awful lot of cops are like, well, I mean, I've met cops who are essentially working for no benefits, no insurance, just because they want to be cops in some little town here and there. And then you tell this little town, oh, the mayor and the chief of the police, by the way, I can bring a couple $1 million in here over the next 5 years if you start this program. They're just going to say yes because they want the money. And they want the resources that come with it. And they want the politics of saying, we're cracking down on drunk drivers or rapists or whatever. Nobody's stopping saying, well, is this a sensible use of that money? Well, I don't know. It's coming from the state or it's coming from wherever. There's a tendency. This is where corruption begins, and it's not even intended as corruption. Why is Podunk, why is the mayor of Podunk, Idaho, need to know that the rape stats are fake? He knows he's going to get money for his town or his county or whatever if he goes along.
Well,
you see what I'm saying, or am I talking too much?
I just want to. They're using political correctness to serve their own agenda.
Well, I don't think it's. Okay, you can always posit in these situations that there's some nefarious person pulling strings behind the scenes, or you can just look at human nature being what it is. We look at information and very often draw exactly the wrong conclusion from it. You don't have to really suppose there are bad people out there. I'm sure most of these people mean well. They're just they're just confused.
Most, and you said most, but I do think it's not out of line to look at, okay, but who's in charge of the actual programs with the money? I think some of them sometimes know. I'd have to go to specific examples, and that's hard, right? Because Justicar is going to challenge me to give a specific example. If you give me some time, I've seen it, because I've been around and I've seen a lot of things. But, well, I'll give you one example. The woman who founded Mothers Against Drunk Driving, she's anti-MAD because she thinks MAD's gone way too far and has advocated civil rights trashing laws that are way in excess of anything she wanted when her child was killed. MAD's a multi-million-dollar organization. Don't tell me the people in charge of it don't think that their own founder thinks they're full of shit. Or my friend Erin Pitsey, who started Chiswick Women's Aid, and now Chiswick Women's Aid threw her out. I mean, they'll arrest her as a trespasser if she shows up because she keeps saying women are just as violent as men in domestic violence relationships. They threw her out of her own organization. So
this is one of my
specifics for you.
Speaking of that in particular about domestic violence, one of the things that annoys me about the MRM, and feminists annoy me too on the same subject, but for slightly different reasons. Feminists will tout up the fact that they've been so successful by arranging for so-called mandatory arrest laws, and many people in the MRM, I don't know how large it is, but a lot of people in the MRM I've heard will talk about these mandatory arrest laws. There is no such thing as a mandatory arrest law. I
don't know of any mandatory arrest laws. I do know of mandatory arrest policies by police departments all over the United States, and if you need examples, I'll give them to you. Just give me some time. Mandatory arrest is a thing. Whether it's legal or police procedure or not is another conversation. And it will vary by state. So whatever state or county you're living in may never do that. But I've talked to enough guys it's happened to, and I've talked to cops who say, yes, this is our training. It's an automatic arrest, and it's whoever looks most upset or in the most danger. That's who we arrest. That doesn't mean they're going to charge anybody, but it's happening, and I'll prove it to you if you need me to. It has more to do with police procedure than law. That's one of the dodges that we see, and it has to do with the fact that if you go to, well, for example, I know for a fact in Oregon, they do have a mandatory arrest policy. Probably the best mandatory arrest policy I've seen, at least around places like, what's the second biggest town in Oregon?
Portland, probably.
No, the second one. Eugene. Eugene is the other part, the big city. It's not that big. In Eugene, the police procedure on a domestic is to arrest both parties unless everybody's calm when they show up. They just automatically arrest both parties. And isolate them and question them in isolation at the police station. Whether that should be the policy or not, it's a better policy than other places that I've seen. So make of that what you will. What I've usually found on the domestic violence issue is that what the law says and what the cops do are not necessarily in line with each other.
Departments can have arrest policies of their own, but there's no such thing as a state arrest policy. That would just be a law. And many states have laws that say things like, for example, here's New Jersey. When a person claims to be a victim of domestic violence and we're a law enforcement officer responding to the incident finds probable cause to believe that domestic violence has occurred, the law enforcement officer shall arrest the person who is alleged to be the person who subjected the victim to domestic violence and shall sign a criminal complaint. It says shall. That makes it a mandatory arrest law, except that it isn't a mandatory arrest law. The legislature cannot force the executive to effect an arrest. They just cannot do it.
That's right. And so what you have is now we're talking about police procedure and who sets the police procedure rules and who trains them for that matter. And we have a number of people who are educated in the Duluth model, which is, by the way, total pseudoscientific horseshit with no validity, maybe 2 or 3% validity, and is being used to inform police policy on who to arrest and who to charge. So it's
That's
an
what
issue.
that's what gives rise to the shall arrest statutes, which people think are mandatory arrest laws, even though they're not. And even some cops think they're mandatory when they're not.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I'm not doubting you. I'm curious. I know a lot about police procedure, but only because of relatives, not having been a cop.
Yeah, it's not all that interesting at all when you realize that 80%, 75, 80% of the law enforcement agencies in the United States don't require anything other than a GED to be hired.
Oh, I know. I was talking to some cops, and I felt sorry for them, but at the same time, it's like, wow, this is cop police, huh? They're part-timers in a small town. No benefits, no stability. Some of them want to go on to be quote-unquote real police, but it's like 5 guys in a town of 30,000.
Yeah, and one of the GED thing is that has so many collateral problems for people's individual liberties. For example, one of the things that courts will look at to determine whether or not an officer's conduct was good or bad is the so-called the reasonable police officer. What would a hypothetically reasonable police officer in the same or a similar set of circumstances do? Well, that question admits of entirely different answers if your standard of reasonableness is a high school student versus a person with a master's degree.
Well, yes, and I'll give you another specific example that you might like.
Give it to
some
me.
years ago, no, I was arguing over the domestic violence issue, and I had a cop.
Wait, you were arguing domestic violence?
Yeah, like I would never do that, right?
Were you using your indoor voice?
Maybe I was being obnoxious. I tried not to, though, because actually it was on my old blog. This was a few years ago. People were saying I was exaggerating the problem of violent women, and I said police prejudice is a major issue here. And I had a cop say, I've been a cop for 30 years, and I've never seen a man struck by a woman who wasn't asking for it. Okay.
Victim
Don't
blamer.
tell me there's not a problem with cops. It's like, wow.
Look, clearly that's not,
giveaway, mate.
that is not a problem with the cop. That's a problem with men deserving to be beaten. Where are your
Yeah.
This is what I meant earlier. I said you look at something and draw the exact wrong conclusion. Obviously, men just need to be beaten. Why?
Okay, hold on. First off, how much of that is projection on your part and you just want to be beaten?
That costs you $3.95 a minute to find out, sir.
Oh.
I'll give you my credit card information after the show.
Oh, yeah, no, that's like saying I'll write a check. Look, motherfucker, I got raped that way once. I didn't know I'd been raped for a week until it bounced, but I don't make the same mistake twice.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's awesome that a cop would actually say that. Wait,
I've never seen a guy beat up by his woman who didn't do something to deserve it. I'm like, okay.
Is he from Texas? Because they do have that whole notion of justice. Well, he needed a killing.
I was actually rendered speechless. I just responded and said, "Okay."
I've
What am
never
I going to say to that?
I've never seen a cop beaten by a woman who didn't deserve it.
That's right. I've really never seen a cop beaten up by anybody who wasn't asking for it by being a cop and all.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've never seen a gangbanger shoot a cop who didn't need to be shot. I mean, hello.
Okay.
Obviously, you were just interfering with their commerce, and so you deserve to be shot.
Okay, I'm going to call it on this article. As much fun as this is.
I think we got off that article. I got off on that article a while ago.
Yeah, you got off on that article right at the beginning. But, okay, this one, Justicar, you get to read out. House tells DOJ to take Gamergate-style online threats seriously.
Yeah, the funny... Well, I lost the window where all those are open. Oh, wait, hold on. There it is.
It's the Jezebel article.
Jezebel.
Jezebel.
Could have just started it as a Jezebel article. Ha 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 ha!
So, in March of this year, Congress creature Catherine Clark of Massachusetts started agitating very publicly for the Department of Justice to quit ignoring online threats against women, asking them specifically to devote more resources to investigating things like the threats and abuse heaped upon game developer Zoe Quinn and others by Gamergate fans. Yesterday, Clark's office announced that the House is formally supporting her request. A memo to the DOJ from the House Appropriations Committee includes the following instructions. I'll just read the bolded part. The committee strongly urges the department to intensify its efforts to combat this destructive abuse and expects to see increased investigations and prosecutions of these crimes. First of all, just a quick linguistic trick that's being pulled here. Jezebel report that says instructions. The House cannot give the department instructions. If they want to give instructions, they have to write a law, which the executive is free to ignore. Anyway, in a press release from her office, Clark is quoted as saying that online threats have an economic impact on women, as well as the more obvious threats to their safety. These threats cause fear for personal safety, create a chilling effect on free speech, and have a negative economic impact for women conducting business online. Actually, I think there's an inverse correlation between the threats people get and their economic activity. If Zoe Quinn and Brianna Wu are any guide, and Anita Sarkeesian. Claim threat, you get more money. Anyway, that is why we're asking the Department of Justice to enforce laws that are already on the books and make these cases a priority. Mind you, this article was written within the last month or so, right as the FBI and local agencies are saying that we don't have the resources to track actual terrorists in the United States. But let's focus on Gamergate.
Yeah. Okay. This to me, I know I'm dominating conversations. This to me really is proof that it's not a conspiracy so much as a sort of groupthink that takes over among these journalists. But what the fuck? Gamergate is our threat now because of all the women who've been raped and minorities who've been strung up by lampposts by fucking gamers. But I mean, okay, you're right to say it's been very lucrative for a handful of women, but how can it be? How can you in fact see? Never mind. I just said that out loud. Gamergate is an evil hate movement that's trying to destroy women. Somebody else, because I'm speechless by that shit.
Well, no, that's actually what I'm getting from the article. Is that's what Gamergate is, and as we said, it has nothing to do with ethics and journalism. Gamergate can go home now. But what was it? I think it was. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Teal Deer. Might have been somebody else. They pointed out that actually it was Women Action and Media pointed out that only less than 1% of anything having to do with the hashtag of Gamergate had to do with or that any of the threats and online harassment these women have faced has to do with Gamergate.
Yeah, what they said is that something like 0.6% of relevant comments and whatnot have been abusive, is what they said. So a subset of that would be threatening ones, I suppose. What counts as abusive is probably not particularly well defined.
Yeah, well, I'm not even going to get into that part, but I mean, it's just
another way to say that is that almost no one involved with Gamergate is threatening anybody.
Exactly.
And even if they were, I mean, they shouldn't be doing that. But I mean, come on, if you're going to buy the other side's argument, these fuckers can't leave their mom's basement long enough to do anything.
All right, I'm going to just say for the record, I've had my life threatened. I've been told all kinds of hateful things like, well, I don't even have to make a list, but I've had all kinds of hateful shit come at me. I think twice in the entire time I've been interacting with people online, I've thought about calling the cops, and I've only done it once.
You got the phone call.
Which phone call?
The phone call about sending you to over to the Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh,
Am I missing a joke, or did I say
no,
something?
No, you actually showed me the.
I did get a phone call from some chick who was just screaming and ranting, and I needed to go to Saudi Arabia because I'm not a real American. So I need to go to Saudi Arabia where I can hate women like the Saudi Arabians do, and it's just a clusterfuck of stupid. It's a YouTube video though. I'll send it to anybody who wants it because I put that shit on YouTube. Because don't call me and call me names because I'm recording that shit and I'm putting it online so people can enjoy it.
No, the funny thing that I love about these poor oppressed damsels is that why don't you go to Saudi Arabia and get up in a man's face and tell him something and see how that works out for you?
We had a couple of guys who'd spent time in Saudi Arabia when that came out, because feminists like to mention Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia, Saudi
I
Arabia.
should have said Afghanistan, but you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, well I know some Afghans too, but we had a guy who'd spent a lot of time in Saudi Arabia, and he told a story about how a Western feminist had been talking to a bunch of people about how they needed to change things, and a bunch of Saudi Arabian women beat the shit out of her.
Well, you know, all I can say is I've never
happening.
seen a woman beaten in the Muslim world by other women who didn't deserve it.
I never have either, so I've never actually seen
Yeah,
it.
to be fair, I've never seen any of them beaten, but you know.
And I forget why I was bringing up that story, except, well, no.
He brought it up.
What I would say to this average person is, if you're so convinced the situation is so bad for women in these countries, and you don't have to ever bother asking what the men have to put up with, which is often considerable, then go there, see for yourself, and see how it goes. The women there probably won't like you much either.
Yeah, no, I mean,
but go for it.
If you live in an oppressive society, one way that you know that you're oppressed is the people you claim are oppressing you. You don't get to walk up to them and spit in their faces without losing teeth. That is a good
low punishment.
Yeah, that's a good clue that you're when you can walk up to people and tell them everything you think about them, and they smile and say, "Go fuck yourself." That's a pretty good clue you're not being oppressed.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
I mean, it's not definitive, but it's a good clue.
Yeah, yeah. The very fact that you're able. I don't know what anybody thinks about Ronald Reagan. I have mixed opinions of the man, but he did once tell a very funny joke to the head of the premier of the Soviet Union at the time.
Yeah.
You know what the difference is in your country and mine? The difference is in my country, a citizen can walk up to my desk and talk to me as president and pound on my desk and say, Mr. President, I don't like the way you're running your country. And in Soviet Union, it's the same. Someone can go into the premier's office and say, I don't like the way Reagan is running his country, and he won't get in trouble. Good joke.
Yes, it's better when Reagan tells it because he gets it right. But it's a good joke.
Sorry, fix me. Fix it.
Yeah, he was talking to somebody. He says, the guy says, it's an American talking and a Soviet public service worker talking. He says, yeah, in my country, I can walk into the president's office and jump up on his desk and bang it and shout at him that I don't like the way that you're running your country. And he goes, oh, I can do that too. I can go to the Secretary General's office and bang on his desk and tell him, Mr. Secretary General, I don't like the way President Reagan is running his country.
Exactly.
Yeah, he has a great joke about the guy getting his car too.
Remember that.
Anyway.
About the Saudi Arabian women, a lot of feminists like to compare one culture to their own culture when it comes to women versus women, when in all reality, if you want to get an accurate picture, you have to stay within that culture and compare the women to the men.
That's right. And if you look into Saudi Arabian culture, having spoken to some people who are Saudi Arabians or spent time there as Westerners, and the religious and legal obligations on men are fierce. And they're actually more likely to do things like have their hands cut off or their heads. And
or both.
Or both. They are...
Well, it looks like they won't be jerking off very often.
They do have legal rights to physically, quote-unquote, chastise their wives, unquote, but they can also go to jail for letting their woman beat on them, just as an example. Oh, we didn't mention that in our little feministy rant, did we? They can go to jail just for not supporting their wife. So, yes, it's an oppressive society by any reasonable standard, if you ask me, but you can't just look at one sex. That makes no sense.
Yeah, and there's also there's mandatory conscription for men.
Yeah, for men. That's right. Gay men, of course, killed if caught. Last I checked.
Actually, it's funny because only the guy who's the bottom gets killed. The top, I guess. I don't understand the distinction, but I'm sure there's some careful reasoning about the Quran and why one is killed.
The guy on top was raping the other one.
Yeah, that's probably the thought, actually. Believe it or not, that's probably literally it.
I have no idea what it is.
But
I don't try to figure out crazy too much.
Well, exactly.
So you live in Illinois?
I used to.
Yes.
Not you, her.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm the important one.
It's not all
here.
about
Fuck
you,
her.
Mr. Entitled.
Fuck her. She's just a girl. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Cora.
That's why I don't fuck girls. Icky poo. Hey, is it true that you guys have teeth down there?
That we have what?
Teeth?
Teeth?
Yeah. Never mind. It's a joke.
She's
to the
making
boys.
fun of you. Do they have teeth in Southern Illinois? Do they have teeth in Southern Illinois?
No, not Illinois. Do girls have teeth in their pussies? God.
Ew.
Oh my gosh.
That's the thing in the South. Don't. They got teeth down there. They bite. Stay away.
Well, I could say something about that, but I wouldn't say it while everyone's watching.
They're not real teeth. They're dentures.
Oh, God.
I fixed it. I dented it and forgot it.
Oh, dear. So
I have a friend who grew up in Midlothian.
Really?
Yeah.
I lived in Midlothian for many years.
Oh.
Yeah, and there's nothing to say about Midlothian. It's a really boring, uninteresting place. But tell him I said hi anyway.
I'll be like, do you know each other?
Yes, we both spent a year there 1 week.
Cool.
No.
Okay, I think Cora had something she wanted to say.
Yeah.
Jokes aside for 2 seconds. Cora, go ahead.
What did I have to say? I mean, we just moved on, didn't we?
I don't know. I think that was just like, we were going off on a tangent, then we just kind of 180'd into a silly place.
Actually, I have a question for you, Cora.
Yes.
No pressure, but I want you to speak for all women for a minute. What is the biggest issue in your estimation that faces women today?
I feel like we're babied too much. Like, I really feel like the government is over-pampering us in some ways, and that make like an overprotective parent. If you floss our teeth for us and stuff like that, then we're never going to get out on our own. We're popping out, too many kids. I'm like, the culture is like structured to where you teach men that respect is earned, you teach women that respect is entitled.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And we could say how that annoys men, and it does annoy some of us, but
only the gay ones.
This is something Allison said, and I like it, which is this is almost like mental foot binding on women. Like, seriously, they don't have to be adults, do they? They just can be catered to forever, and they can blame everybody else for their issues.
Well, I noticed these things that when I was younger that I heard a lot, and it's sort of, I look back and it really influenced. They were just really small sayings, but it really influenced very large how I acted. The sayings that I should be allowed to say whatever I want, which is usually taken out of context to basically I don't have to have boundaries, or I can you should never hit a woman. And some women, take that as, again, I don't have to have boundaries and you can't hit me.
Yeah, that's not a lesson I learned too well.
I think that it's true that a lot of this is stuff that you can bring class into it, but I don't think your average working class girl whose mom had to get a job and whose dad had to get a job is as stupid as some of these pampered, rich white girls who are feminists and think they're oppressed because, I don't know, because somebody said cunt in their presence. I find working class women generally have a lot more sense. Not all of them, but it's what I see.
I was actually being serious when I said that's a lesson I didn't learn. I have scars on my my left hand from when I was a kid, and this girl at school grabbed my hand and started digging her nails into it and laughing, and I broke her nose. Yeah, and I broke her nose. So I get called to the office. We don't hit girls. I'm like, half of us apparently do.
Well, I actually have a few stories of my own where, I really was, obnoxious, where I basically won simply because I was a girl.
Right.
I was in my band class. I was in band, and this one guy says, "I dare you to hit him." Okay, and so I get up and I slap him across the face. Everybody laughs, and he pushes me down, and everybody gets up and yells at him.
Yeah, see, humans are weird when it comes to that. This is the thing. I've known that this protective instinct is normative, protective instinct of females, that females can get away with the behavior you're describing for 30 years. For 40 years. I'm old, right? I know girls can and do take advantage of the fact that boys won't hit them. Then this hysteria over violence toward women started, and I'm like, are you people just not noticing how fucking violent women can get? And the answer appears to be no, they're not noticing. It's weird. It's like surreal. Like, really? You've never met a violent bitch? Really? Your whole life?
One of the precarious things about this is, like, most people aren't violent generally. I mean, they just aren't. So you're generally talking about a small proportion of people, anyways.
Well, that's true. That's true.
But the squeaky wheel gets the grease and all that. But no, I'm serious. I remember distinctly. I was 8 years old, and when she did that, I laid her out.
Well, it was your inherent misogyny.
And that's why I don't like girls.
Yeah, didn't you know that gay men are misogynistic?
I've heard, actually, from some feminists that our hatred goes so deep that we can't even look at them as sex objects. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not in a position to deny that without it seeming self-serving, so I won't even try. But I use the same thing about when I used to get called a racist in the South. I was like, no, it's not because you're black, it's because I'm white.
What? When did you have an occasion to say that particular sentence? I need to hear this story.
Oh, when I was young, I went to private schools, and then I transferred to public schools for high school. And it completely different climate, I'll just say. And I hadn't run into all that many black people in my social circle, and I don't want this to sound racist, but I call a spade, which apparently you shouldn't call black people.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, and I used to hang out with one of the guys. His name was Brandon. Probably still is. I doubt he changed it. But we were walking in the hall of the school, and this black kid runs up, and he stuck out his fist, and he said, "Black power." His fist up in the air. And my friend Brandon reached out and wrapped his hand around the guy's fist, and he says, "Under white supervision."
Christ.
I was dying laughing, too. I thought it was hysterical. And the guy's like, "You're a racist." I'm like, "I don't hate you because you're black. It's just because I'm white." Like, if you're going to go up and start screaming black power at me, don't expect me to smile and be like, "Oh, yes, sir."
This is in high school, right?
Yeah. I said some shit when I was on the job, too, like that, pull some guy over in the middle, 1 o'clock in the morning, and you only pulled me over because I'm black. And the first time someone said that to me, I just looked at it because 1 o'clock in the morning, I can clearly see in other people's cars and know what race they are. And I looked at him and smiled and said, "You're right. It's because you're a nigger, not because you're breaking the law. But driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, please." And he filed a complaint.
Well, I actually would have backed him up and say, "Don't say nigger while you're on the job, please." Maybe I'm too PC, but I said, please don't do that.
Don't call me a racist.
Oh, fair enough. I can see why you didn't last too long as a cop. Oh my God!
No, I didn't get run out of the profession. I left of my own volition. No,
you were but I'm guessing it's because you couldn't take the bullshit.
Oh, no, that's not why. I had good one-liners for lots of people, which occasionally got me in trouble, but I didn't mind. Like the one guy, he ran a stop sign right in front of me, so I hit my brakes to avoid hitting him. And I pulled him over, and I gave him a summons for it, for running the stop sign. And when we were talking, he was like, "Well, I slowed down." And I was like, "Well, how would you like it if I pulled up my baton and started beating you about the head and neck, and then would you prefer that I slow down? Would you prefer that I slow down or stop? See, it's not the same thing, is it?" And I got caught on the carpet for that one. The guy was there and big meeting about it, and I got what I thought. I took it as more of a suggestion than an order that I should probably in the future not say things like that. And I said, "Well, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your opinion. I'll give it consideration later." And then that's when I was told that it wasn't so much a request as an order, and then I was told to apologize to the guy. So I turned to him and said, I'm very sorry that example was way out of line. If I pulled out my gun and started shooting you, would you rather I slow down or stop? See, it's not the same thing, is it?
You have a point. You have a point.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap this up. It was a lot of fun though. Okay. Before I say thank you to everybody, we're gonna go with final thoughts on any of the topics. We're gonna go with ladies first. So, just a car.
Yes, thank you. I knew that was coming.
Well, at least something's coming around here.
Because of the beta male insecurity and having to be homophobic like you are. Clearly, I knew a joke was coming at my expense, and I'm greatly offended. I will let you know through my attorneys later in the week how offended I am.
Okay, hold on. But is that before or after we do the whole $3.95 a minute?
That depends. I might put some of that expenses against the amount of offense that I took.
Okay, fair enough.
Or I might lie and say I will and then sue you for the full amount later anyway. I just don't know yet. I have to get in touch with my inner pain to let you know. What was it? It was in that vein, conversation between lawyers, and one of them was about your client's continued whatever. You should know that the damages we're going to sue for depend heavily in part upon your future response. And the lawyer sent back a letter saying, we are in receipt of your letter, and we understand that the forward damages will be calculated upon our response. How would your client react if we were to respond by "go fuck yourself"? No, I don't have any thought. But except if you are a cop, when you're on the job, don't be racist.
Racist?
Oh, I'm sorry, racist.
Okay.
Okay. So, Dean, any final thoughts on this?
My final thoughts. Well, for a hangout, we just had a nice. It was good to talk to you, actually, Justicar. I've always wanted to say hello to you.
He was about to say, "I've had better."
I've had better. That's true. I have. But that's okay. You were studly enough for me today, and otherwise, it was good talking to everybody. I'm glad we sat down. I was kind of in the dumps. I wanted to talk to somebody. So
I'm glad I could be here to hang out with my wang out.
With your what?
Hang out with my wang.
Did you put that away, or did you leave it out the whole time?
No, I still let the Asian is still out.
Okay.
Name's Mr. Wang.
Yeah, start of a conversation on Twitter that nobody else saw. Inside joke between myself, Justicar, and Cora. Speaking of which, Cora, any final thoughts?
About the Gamergate thing, I mean, if you don't want, comments coming to you, just block them. I mean, seriously, professionals, like they said, it can be bad for business women conducting business. I mean, professionals would block you anyways. So.
That's right.
One thing about professionals is they don't tend to rise to the top by taking every opportunity they can find to be offended. They just, they deal with the adversities of life and they soldier on.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, thanks for having me, gentlemen and Cora.
Jim, you want to close us out, please?
Oh, God, I forgot about him.
Yeah, yes, I've been forgotten about.
Go ahead, Mr. Entitled.
Well, thank you so much, sweetheart. All right. Like I said, I want to thank everybody for joining us. It's been a fun time. It's been a pleasure. And for everybody listening, remember to take the red pill.
Okay.
Drugs are bad. Okay. All right. Have a good day.
Have a good one, guys. Thanks.